I'm Suzanne Murdoch and welcome to Series 3 of Powering Productivity. Each episode I explore the energy that really genuine connections, expertise and being in your best flexible working environment can bring to you, your business and your whole life. So let's get started. Welcome to you. So today it's back to basics. We're talking real human interaction, a sense of community, purpose, and togetherness. What's really behind fulfilling our sense of belonging? And what does community in the workplace actually mean? Is it different depending on location and the environment that we're in? I'm joined by Lucy McInally today, the Inclusive Coworker and experienced content writer specifically for businesses within the co-working industry. She's a seasoned expert and a big co-working and co-living advocate. She's also worked from many different co-working and flex space setups. And so I'm really fascinated by your perspectives, Lucy, and I guess your experiences and stories within this sector. We met up recently at the London Workspace Design Show in Islington and really enjoyed the panel conversation there about community in the workplace. But it actually got quite intense around how different people interpret the whole piece on community and that belonging very differently, and to what extent, I guess, different types of workspaces and environments really embrace this, and whether it's from like a relationship, a hospitality or an events perspective. So keen to deep dive more into that today, and also touch on something that I think's very much related to this topic, and that's How to Be More Pirates, which is a book that we've both read and a big movement now, written originally by Sam Conniff and Alex Barker, who we both met when she spoke there at Juicy in London last year. So Lucy, for those who haven't met you or listened to you, tell me a little bit about yourself, your purpose, etc., and what you're up to at the moment.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction, Suzanne. Really appreciate it. So like you said, I'm the Inclusive Coworker. I write content for businesses in the co-working industry. And I've been working in this industry now for the last couple of years, although my sort of journey of what led me to kind of become, as I call it, the Inclusive Coworker kind of started a long time ago. I have a background in interior design, and I was doing a master's at the Glasgow School of Art, and that's when I first started to sort of explore spaces and inclusivity in spaces, and what and how some people feel comfortable in a space and others don't, and that's kind of been a core thread through a lot of the things that I'm doing at the moment. So yeah, it's kind of led me to this point, really.
Very good. And you're working from Town Square in Islington at the moment.
Yes, so Town Square is my workspace. I've been a member at this space since like the end of 2022. So it was kind of like a few months after I moved to London. Originally, I was based in Scotland, and I've sort of been to quite a few different spaces between like Edinburgh, where I was living before, and then London here. And it took me quite a long time to kind of get into like the right workspace, but I've been here for like 18 months now, and it's definitely felt like the right space to be a part of, and I've really enjoyed meeting the community and sort of participating in that community as well.
It's interesting you use the term finding the right space for you. We'll pick up on a bit on that later, I guess, and what the right space to you actually means. So dive more into that. So let's dive into these topics and start discussions around them. And I love the term that you use, the inclusive co-worker. So I guess why choose that, and what does that mean to you? What's the purpose behind that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I really it's really cool to hear people say that, like kind of catch on to the term, because it's something that I've like softly launched only a few months ago. So I've only recently been sort of like calling myself, if you like, the inclusive coworker. I was just saying a little bit earlier, the journey has really started way before this. And when I was doing a master's in interior design, I was studying at the Glasgow School of Art. I went into this course with a sort of like focus on intergenerational living, and that was like based on a project that I'd been working on prior to coming onto the course. And in our first semester, we were all given like a site in Glasgow to kind of explore and kind of come up with a new concept for that space. My space was a church, and I started exploring, like, why do people gather in churches? Why do people gather in these kind of spaces that have like a meaning and that bring people together into a sort of community? I brought people into that space to kind of explore that a little bit further, and we used a methodology called co-design, which is collaborative design sort of framework where people come into a space and sort of like, it's very like organic what happens in that kind of process. We did like a lot of conversations within the space about, like, what does the space mean to you? Is it welcoming? Is it comfortable? And the inclusive kind of word kept coming up. But we also kind of designed, and that was through sort of, we were sort of doing it through play, designing new concepts for this space and what it could become. And it was just very fluid and like multifunctional, basically. Some people felt like a space like that should be repurposed to provide like a community kitchen. Others were talking about workspaces. And this is before I sort of had entered the co-working industry. So I sort of had this idea around spaces and inclusivity and community, but it wasn't like formalized in that co-working sense. And it's kind of a weird journey that I've taken to then be within the co-working industry, because when I finished my master's, I started working for a co-living organization called Coliv. And through my connections that I made there, and then moving to London in 2022, I was introduced to the London Co-working Assembly, which I know we're both part of. And there's a lot of people in that industry who have shared values around human interaction and connection and community. And when I sort of stepped into the room at my first London co-working event, I felt that sort of energy from the people I was talking to, and I felt that we had really aligned values. And so I really felt like I wanted to be a part of this industry and explore a bit further. And sort of fast forward to the start of last year, and I was leading a panel at the Workspace Design Show around DEI initiatives. And one of the questions I'd asked the panel, or was going to ask the panel, was around co-working being a trendsetter for inclusivity. And one of the panelists, Shazia, she pulled me aside. She founded a co-working and nursery space, and she pulled me aside and was like, I don't think co-working is wholly like inclusive. So we ended up using that panel to sort of talk about why the industry isn't inclusive as of yet, and like what we kind of like, they were sort of talking about what can we do to make this a more inclusive and welcoming kind of industry at large. And that sort of, I felt like there was something more to talk about there. So I think the inclusive co-worker really comes from that journey of discovery, and I'm using it as a platform to talk about inclusive co-working practices and sort of open a dialogue around that. So right now it's just like a newsletter, but I'd love to sort of do more with that and to talk about it more, because I feel that there's more to be said and done in the workspace industry, and I'm really interested in what other people feel about it, and how it transforms their life, because I feel like co-working can be really transformative, but it has to be the right conditions maybe set up to enable that.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite a story. I love the way you're really practicing what you're preaching. You're completely immersed in what you're talking about.
I
And
love
you've
it.
got the
Yeah,
whole
I'm in the
backstory to go
workspace.
with it. But actually that's a fantastic hypothesis. Is it inclusive? Have we still got some way to go? But I certainly think we're on the right trajectory, and it's
Agreed.
so much more inclusive than an awful lot of sectors to date, and the traditional side of real estate and hospitality. But also picking up on what you were saying around the interior design side of things and working with churches. It's interesting because immediately, I guess the first thing you think of when you say interior design is you're thinking about the infrastructure, but you're very much talking about the whole humanity, the inclusivity, the belonging, the interaction side of things, which a lot of people don't think about when they think of co-working. They're just thinking of businesses under one roof and the whole infrastructure and facilities that go with that. But there's so much more around it, which is, I guess, why I'm really keen to talk to you, because you have a lot of stories and experiences from different perspectives. So let's dive into the next question. So when it comes to community, in your experience, having remote worked from, I guess, both local independent spaces, big branded spaces in city centres, what has worked well in terms of the experiences that you've had and that sense of belonging?
That's a really good question. And I was really reflecting on that because I didn't really think about the fact that I've really got quite a bit of variety of co-working experiences. My first like formal workspace experience was when I joined Clockwise in Leith in Edinburgh in 2021. And I did that mainly because I needed social interaction. I felt very lonely. It was sort of just as we were coming out of that second lockdown. What I really liked about Clockwise was that they like Leith, well, especially where it's located, because it's sort of on the periphery of the city centre of Edinburgh. And it's surrounded by lots of different services. So I would kind of define Leith as a 15-minute city. And I really felt that when I was in the workspace, because you would bump into people, on a Saturday at the local coffee shop or like down at the gym, which was round the corner. And for me, the workspace was like a 15-minute walk away. And that wasn't intentional. It's just afterwards learning about the sort of 15-minute concept. I was like, wow, I actually have this because I walk, and it was a lovely walk as well because it's like down the riverside, the waters of Leith. So it was a lovely walk down to that workspace as well. And I felt that that space was just like the perfect kind of place for me as a freelancer to sort of start meeting people in my local area and get to know people. I know that Clockwise is quite aimed at sort of offices and businesses, like larger businesses as well. And I think that's a really hard kind of balance to strike for a lot of operators. Because when I moved down to London, I had hastily joined a workspace because I felt like I needed the same sort of experience that I had up in Edinburgh. So I was like looking for my next workspace. I was like, I know I can meet people if I go to a co-working space. So I need to do this straight away. And I joined a workspace that I didn't actually meet anyone because even though I was allowed to use that space and I was sort of hot desking in that space, the space I'd say the business was sort of aimed more at larger teams, and they'd already got their sort of groups and then sort of team dynamics and things like that. So it was quite difficult to meet other people in that setting. And because I then started to go less and less and then didn't go at all after that, and I was sort of still thinking, oh, I'd love to join another space. I started looking around for other ideas. And actually through London Co-working and that community, I came across Town Square Islington, where I'm based right now. And I've been a member of since the end of October 2022. And I think for me, this space is really social and welcoming. We have a brilliant community manager, Anna, who welcomes everyone who walks through the door here. I think that means a huge difference to set people up when they first arrive at the workspace, even for the first time, to have sort of like a more meaningful experience of the space and to feel comfortable and welcome in this space as well. That certainly was my experience of coming here. There's also quite a lot of freelancers who use this space as well. So I've met a few freelancers who I feel that we have shared challenges and shared things going on. Most of them are content creators, which I sort of have become more of a content creator maybe because of them, because I've sort of learned from them, and we share challenges and what we're working on at the moment, and that's hugely beneficial. Yeah.
And there's quite a few communities within Town Square, isn't there? I know they're very hot on the whole social media and events and things. And I get the impression that it's co-curating. You know, they're not trying to force communities together. It's very much the whole co-creation, and the members are part of that and can
Definitely
create themselves.
100%. It's very organic, I feel, and Anna is such a amazing person to sort of like. She listens to you. She asks how you're doing, and I sort of came in this morning and had a challenge that I didn't even expect to tell her what was going on, and she sort of was like, right, this is what you can do, and this is how we can work it out, and like let's check in and see how you're going. And I felt that and this has been my experience throughout the whole time I've been here. It's very personal, and it's very like it's very transformative to my work life and to the other people's work life here. So I definitely feel that. I feel like we also do a lot of value exchange as well for the other members. So we tend to like run workshops around the skills that we have. So there's a guy, Tim, who is a real LinkedIn wizard, and he does one-to-one LinkedIn sessions with us, which is really, really great to like improve our skills and our presence. And those sort of workshops, I know they have the startup club as well, which brings in a lot of new people, and we mingle with them. It's just a very friendly space, and I think that that friendliness and that welcoming attitude is really great to feel like you belong in this community for sure.
Yeah. I love the
Yeah.
value exchange concept. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really
Because it,
cool,
it
isn't it?
happens it happens so organically within a lot of co-working spaces that you actually don't
Yeah.
realize it's happening. It's about when
Yeah.
you, I mean, as a coach, I talk a lot about strengths, and a lot of people have got these strengths that they're so natural at they don't even
Yeah.
realize
Yeah.
what they have. And it's
Yeah,
about
that's
putting
true.
that into action and using those
Mm,
values, those strengths. Um, yeah, but picking up on the word listening, you know, Anna does a lot of listening. I think that is so
mm,
key within
mm.
communities, whether it's in the workplace, outside, those deep listening skills and that whole relationship building. Because you're looking at
100%.
people when they're in a workplace, they've got requirements, whether it's, you know, job related infrastructure, personal requirements, that whole sense of belonging. It's really, really key to understand that person's makeup and what they need to function really well.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point. Anna says to me that she listens even when we're having sort of like conversations between each other and sort of picks out what we might need. And I feel that there's a real I guess this is the community element as well. We're really like supporting each other and empowering each other. Not only Anna to us, but we hopefully she feels that we empower her as well, and we feel that she's a really intrinsic part of our community. I feel like there's like little kind of micro communities within the town square kind of dynamic because we've got a couple of companies, but there's a real core group of freelancers. We all sort of joined at the same time, and it's been a slow burner, but by sort of last summer, we really felt like we would hang out outside of work. So there's another element of that as well. It's like, it's not just like things going on in work. It's not like we leave the room at 5 p.m. and that's it. We don't talk to each other until the next morning. It's like we still connect with each other. We still help each other. And there's so much of that going on in this community, in this workspace. So I think that's what's really important about community in co-working is it's not just within the space, not just contained here. It's sort of beyond. And I think it would also, because I mentioned that we're moving spaces as well, it's like I think it would also last a lot longer than sort of our time in these spaces as well. I think that we've really I feel like I've made connections for a long time, so it's been really great.
And it's that whole trust element, isn't it? The almost like a safe space. You can get
Yeah,
curious. You can ask the
100%.
questions. You can brain dump. There's a shoulder to cry on if you need. You know, there's all the different elements, but it feels safe, which is a
Absolutely.
huge thing if you just want to be yourself.
Yeah,
Whereas there's
100%.
there's a difference between feeling like you belong and fitting in.
Yes, it's not like a forced kind of
Yeah,
fitting in. It's like it feels safe. I mean, the crying thing, do that a lot. Get it out there. I feel safe here. We kind of talk about how we feel able to let out that vulnerability when we need to. I think that's a healthy way to approach. I mean, as long as it's not too much on someone else, it's healthy to kind of be as open and authentic as possible because then you feel like you really do belong in that community. It doesn't feel like I say forced or inauthentic, I guess. Yeah, that's
and
definitely
it's a
true.
brilliant environment when you've got that platform. That's a brilliant environment to be able to grow personally
Mm,
and within your business.
100%. Yeah, I feel like the growth of all of us, you can just see it because we've been together in a space now for, yeah, the last year, 18 months. We can really see how people have grown and supporting each other on our individual journeys, but also like collaborating when that makes sense to collaborate and when it makes sense to kind of lift each other up in that sense as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of journey through co-working that. I don't know if you expect that when you first joined some. I certainly didn't think I would grow as much as I have since joining the space. So
Yeah.
it's made a huge impact.
I actually, when I was at the Flexa conference last year, and you're there, and you might meet up, which actually brings me on to the next question in a minute, but you meet up at these co-working conferences and you look back at how far co-working itself has come and the whole flex industry, but also how you as a human have grown as well, alongside your
Mm,
business, hopefully. But I think it's actually for me more from a personal perspective, the
mm,
confidence and the inclusivity bit that you wouldn't necessarily have got from other
yeah.
sectors.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess in your position as well, because you are sort of leading the community that you run, it's like I guess like people would come to you for advice and a listening ear and things like that.
Yeah, it was very it's very two-way, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I think I mean, we've all grown together. A lot of the members that started with us are still with us. So we've all grown
Mm,
together, families, the businesses,
mm,
etc.
that's so
So
lovely.
no, it is lovely.
Yeah.
And actually, that brings me on to the next question. When we look at the Flex and the co-working conferences, like Juicy, the London Co-working Assembly, European Co-working Assembly, do
Mm,
you get a different vibe and energy from that than you would do perhaps from the day-to-day co-working spaces?
that's a good question. I there's something you said earlier around like how collaborative this industry is, and I think you can definitely sense that when you're at these events, like the Juicy conference. I was kind of reflecting on the Juicy that we. It's so funny that we were both on that tour on the second day of Juicy London, and we didn't realize, but I felt like that event was, the first day was pretty formal, and I think that when I'm in those sort of spaces around people that, I mean, for me, I working with businesses in the co-working industry, so there's an element of like professionalism, sorry, to way I approach people in the industry. I did feel that from the first day. I guess maybe it was the setting we were in, but on the second day it was really laid back and really fun, just going around those spaces. I think because it was a Friday as well, it was like a really fun experience. Like everyone just seemed to be a little bit looser on the second day. I think also there's that you're past that sort of first introduction stage as well. So like when I went to the because there was that sustainability workshop before our tour, and when I went into to that room, I sort of recognized people who had met the day before, and we started chatting. And I think that having those icebreakers the day before meant that everyone felt a little bit more relaxed on the second day. I don't know if you felt that
Absolutely,
as
yeah.
well.
And there was the Friday bit. It's funny, London was really
Yeah,
quiet that day, but
yeah,
it's obviously that trend that a lot of people are in the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but Friday with the
yeah.
whole hybrid working is a lot quieter.
Yeah, it does seem that way. They were definitely very quiet in their spaces, and so I guess we didn't really get to see what those sort of workspace communities were like. I think that maybe around my workspace community, I'm a lot more um, laid back because, and like maybe more open because I sort of, because my community is filled with freelancers and people who have shared challenges. There's a sort of level of like, yeah, being open and sort of talking about what we're going through and things like that I probably wouldn't do at like a Juicy conference. So I think that maybe being part of a co-working community and sort of engaging in that and participating in that and going every day or however often you go into your workspace, you get to, after a while, because you start off pretty uh you know guarded maybe, but after a few months you kind of get to the point where you have those sort of serendipitous moments and
Yeah.
conversations, and you hang out in the evenings and go and do fun things together as socials. I mean, we have so many fun socials here. We had a murder mystery night back in October, which was amazing. Our other member, Catherine, she wrote the whole script for the event, and that was just like so fun and really like amazing to have somebody who's a member who's sort of putting so much work to organize that as well, and that really brought us together. So, and it was fun, murder mystery night is always going to be a
Oh,
good
and
laugh.
another example of the whole co-creation and how the community gets involved. It's just not um the manager-led thing. It's very much everyone's involved, not even bottom up or top down. It's a flat platform there.
Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely. Mm.
But I think even with these conferences, a lot of the same people would attend all the different ones, and you do again. It's a slow burner, but you do gradually build those relationships. And there's a lot of springboard things that happen from there, and different events, relationship building, different ideas. I think it's brilliant. It's just another
Yeah,
way of building those relations and those networks. But again,
yeah,
it
definitely.
feels quite organic.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, when you kind of meet people again and again at these things as well, I definitely think that like the London co-working group is quite a nice community because you see the people again and again. It was really lovely at the Workspace Design Show, which is where we met. The people who came, because I was on the panel the day before you, and the people who came I felt like they were supporting me, which was really
Yeah.
lovely as well, and listening. And it was just lovely to see everyone because we hadn't met up since actually Juicy was the last time that I'd seen most people. So it was lovely to connect again and see how everyone was doing. And yeah, you do feel like there's a genuine community there with people sharing their values and sharing
Yeah,
stories and helping each other. So yeah, it's definitely a lovely sense of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this. When we look to create a workspace that
Mm.
people want to belong to, what is it that they're looking for aside from the whole functionality and the infrastructure thing? And what drives members to sign up and actually stay there? I know we've talked a little bit around this, but just taking a bit of a deeper thought
Mm,
around it.
it's a really good question. And I guess it depends from person to person what they're looking for. I mean, earlier we were saying about how some people look at co-working maybe for the first time as just a workspace and a place to come and put your head down. I can imagine, yeah, if home and you're working from home most of the time, that is not a conducive environment to your productivity, then you might come and look for an alternative space, or it's maybe the social. I mean, for me, it was the social connection. So it's I think it's individual kind of decisions. And but I think, like you're saying, like you might come into a space, but how are you going to what's that decision maker to kind of to allow you to stay, and how like yeah, how would you feel comfortable in that space in order to yeah to stay and be participate in that community. And I wonder if it is that community element and it is the people who facilitate that. And it's if you walk into a space for the first time and you're welcomed by somebody and like the community manager, and you feel comfortable in that space. And um, or is it something else, like going back to when I first moved to London and I joined the first workspace I sort of had walked into. I was very taken by the design element, and I know that a lot of spaces are very beautifully designed. But I feel in the industry there's now this conversation around, is the design, it's the aesthetic pleasing, yes, but is it functional? Is it practical? Are the chairs comfortable? Can you stay in that space for 8 hours and feel not have a bad back at the end of the day? And is the Wi-Fi good? And is the coffee good? I think there's so many different elements to it. But I can imagine that, and from my experience, that's the people that kind of drive us to stay. I know that's might be my experience. Just feeling like, oh, actually, I meet people that I have shared connections with, and um, they're also freelancers, and we have similar challenges and things like that. That's what kind of has enabled me to stay in Town Square, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, people are the space. The
Mm,
space is the infrastructure, yeah, it's a building. But actually, when you think of some designs, you walk in and you think, wow, but they're actually quite superficial because there's so
mm,
much more to that belonging than just the bricks and mortar. Um,
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
after a while, it almost seems you don't notice those amazing designs because the people are so important. And that whole relationship building and the understanding around what it is you need, how you work well, what's the
Mm,
best environment for you. Are you here all the time, or do you like those quiet times where no one's going to approach you? It's having those
mm,
choices.
mm,
So yeah, I think for me, people are the space.
definitely. And I think there's something around like co-working. You in most cases you choose to come to a co-working space and you're sort of paying out of your own pocket. So what is going to make you what's giving that value to you in order for you to kind of make that decision? I know for me, it's being around people who lift me up and empower me, and feel, and it's also fun as well because we hang out and saying about the social events and things like that. It's definitely a social experience. And I used to struggle to work around other people because I get quite distracted, and sometimes an open plan space is quite difficult for me to sort of concentrate in and get my head down. But actually, I don't know if I've sort of switched recently where I'm working from home and I actually feel quite lonely working from home. And I actually feel like I don't want to be at home. I don't really need to be all by myself. I actually want to be around people. So, and around people that I know, and I feel like almost FOMO when I'm not part of those conversations and people are like hanging out after work and it happens organically. And I'm like, oh, I missed that because I didn't go in. So I think there's a real life enhancing benefit to the people aspect and the community aspect in co-working spaces as well, and why people join them.
And having that choice can be life enhancing as well, because let's face it, not
Yeah,
everyone is able to do that and have that
no,
choice.
absolutely. And I guess some people were like forced into the office, but there's not many people there, or they don't feel connected to their co-workers. So it's definitely a privilege to be able to choose where I can work and where and who I work with as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go, we have to talk around this being more pirate.
Yeah.
You know, we both, well, I listened to the audio book. I think did you read the book Being More Pirate by Sam Conniff and Alex Barker? And the whole movement, I guess, for anyone that wants to shake things up and look at things very differently. And I read somewhere it's like a willingness to think differently, to challenge the norm. Tell me about your thoughts around this book.
Yeah, I really found this really interesting. I loved the comparison that Alex brought to Juicy, on the comparison between the sort of rebel spirit of pirates. And I know that co-working isn't necessarily the main theme of the book, but it's more about this, thinking differently and being more pirate. I love how that they've created this movement. It's almost like they've created a community in itself through this book as well. But what particularly stood out to me was when Alex came into Juicy, she opened Juicy with this conversation around piracy and co-working, and how actually both really similar. And then it sort of went on a kind of a bit of a rabbit hole of the history of pirates and the sort of elements of piracy that were kind of exemplified the rebel spirit. I found it really fascinating. I thought that, like, wow, there was really a lot to compare with piracy and this sort of like entrepreneurial spirit, let's say, which I think can be identified with a lot of people in the co-working industry and a lot of the founders and the co-workers themselves. So I really found it like it's really inspiring, isn't it? I mean, what did you think about it?
No,
Yeah.
well, I love the historical aspects of it, and also the fact that she was talking about how when we look back, pirates bringing almost the first initial layers of democracy, and how their platform was very open and everyone had to vote for the different captains, for example. You could easily vote the captain out, but everything was so open and ideas were exchanged so regularly and talked about and debated. And, women had the votes. Everything was very equal.
Definitely. It's
and
really
they
cool
could challenge each other without worrying about, I don't know, walking the plank, being killed, etc. But recognizing today that there are so many rules and norms, etc., that don't work for us anymore, and rethinking those whole different systems, etc. I just think it's fascinating, and that there is no wrong answer. And I think within co-working itself, there are so many different communities that already exist because people have come together from knowing and understanding and having those relationships and growing and knowing the perspectives that they're bringing and the ideas that they have. And so organically, you've got these little groups that are doing wonderful things, and that they're transforming and actually acting upon them rather than just talking about them.
Yeah, that really summarizes it really well. I love that that movement has kind of sparked that conversation around community and co-working, and definitely the thing you were saying around like the democratic element of pirates and how that can be compared with co-working is really fascinating as well. I love how, like you say, that you could vote in and out the captain, and I think there was something around like the captain did, even though the captain was voted the captain, they had decision making only over matters where they were in conflict, rather than like everyday kind of things going on aboard the ships. So I thought that was really cool history. I didn't know that. I didn't know. I mean, I learned so much about the history of pirates through this as well. And like you say, female pirates, and they had same-sex marriages, and it was a very inclusive movement that maybe we always look at pirates and think, oh, robbers and thieves and things like that, but actually how that movement began, and what it led to, and what their sort of values and their practices were. Really, really interesting.
And it led to co-living as well. And I was looking at watching the Netflix documentary, and they all ended up in God, the names escape me. Napa, is it Napa Island? They went to this desert island, and gradually it became the island of all the pirates gathering. So it was like a co-living movement in itself.
That's so interesting. Yeah, bringing everyone together. There's definitely seemed to be that huge network of people kind of under the same having the same values, for sure.
Yeah. Just looking at time, Lucy, we better wrap up. But tell people how they can learn more about you.
Yeah, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. So come and find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM under Lucy McInally. My website is lucymcinally.com, and do subscribe to my newsletter, The Inclusive Coworker, if you'd like to kind of hear more from me around inclusive co-working practices and sort of community building elements. I'm hoping to produce a lot more around this topic. So
brilliant. We'll put all those in the show notes as well, those links.
Thank you.
It's been brilliant talking to you. I wish we had another hour, but we don't. So we'll wrap up. Everybody have a wonderful day. And thank you, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. You can find more information in the show notes or on our website, thehubnuri.com. While you're there, why not join our mailing list so we can keep you in the know about everything we're up to? And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen, so you don't miss an episode. Powering Productivity is presented by me, Suzanne Murdoch. It's produced by Emily Crosby Media.